Number 9. Sword fights were taken seriously. Even in a comedy built on absurdity, the action had to look real. Mel Brooks insisted the fight sequences carried genuine physical weight, understanding that parody works best when the thing being spoofed is executed convincingly. As he put it in the making of documentary, "If you're putting Robin Hood's name on a marquee, you owe the audience horses and sword fighting." That philosophy drove the cast into weekend rehearsals that ran through Saturdays and Sundays for the duration of the shoot. Overseeing the training was fencing coordinator Victor Paul, a veteran stunt professional who had worked on major action films, including Die Hard. Paul found that Cary Elwes was a particularly fast study, thanks to the extensive sword training the actor had already undergone for The Princess Bride. All Paul needed to do was teach Elle the specific routines. The foundational skills were already in place. The other cast members required more work, but the commitment was universal across the ensemble. The result is a film where the climactic duel between Robin and the Sheriff of Rottingham feels genuinely exciting, even as the jokes keep coming. Elwes even landed a real bullseye during the archery scenes, despite Brooks giving him only 3 takes to nail it. The pressure was real, the training was serious, and the physicality on screen reflects all of it. That contrast, professional execution wrapped in comedy, is exactly what makes the slapstick land harder than it has any right to. Number 10. An actor nearly shot from a hospital. Near the end of production, one of the lead actors fell seriously ill, and the director's response was pure Mel Brooks. Richard Lewis, who played the neurotic Prince John, was almost finished with his scenes when he was suddenly hospitalized with hepatitis A. His fever reportedly spiked to 106 degrees, leaving him bedridden and unable to return to set. He had just 2 lines left to deliver. Brooks, completely undeterred by the medical reality, called Lewis's hospital room with a plan. The idea was to lay Lewis on a stretcher, drive him to the set, prop him up against some wood, let him say his 2 remaining lines, and rush him straight back to the hospital, all within 20 minutes. It was the kind of scheme that sounds like a deleted scene from one of Brooks' own movies, and Lewis recounted the story years later with obvious affection for the absurdity of it all. Whether the plan was ever seriously attempted or simply remained a running joke between director and actor, the anecdote captures something essential about how the production operated. Deadlines didn't pause for emergencies, and Brooks handled stress the same way he handled everything else, with humor. Lewis eventually recovered and went on to become beloved for his role as Larry David's foil on Curb Your Enthusiasm, but the hospital episode remains one of the most memorable behind-the-scenes stories from the entire shoot. Number 11. The fake Cliffs of Dover trick. When Robin Hood swims back to England in the film, the audience sees the famous white cliffs of Dover rising above the shoreline, except none of it was real. The entire shot was created using a foreground miniature, a classic filmmaking technique that places a small-scale model close to the camera to blend with the live-action background. The actual location was Paradise Cove in Malibu, with a small England sign perched on top of the fake cliff to complete the illusion. The man responsible for setting up the shot was Robert Lamb Brown, the film's production manager, who had previously worked on major productions like Return of the Jedi, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and Spaceballs. Brown later described the experience of working on the film as one of his most enjoyable, largely because of the people involved. The miniature shot is a perfect example of how low-cost practical effects could deliver both a visual gag and a convincing image at the same time. What makes the moment work is that it operates on 2 levels simultaneously. For viewers who don't notice the trick, it simply looks like a wide shot of the English coast. For those who catch the miniature or the hand-painted sign, it becomes another layer of comedy built into the filmmaking itself. The gag costs almost nothing compared to digital effects, and it lasts only a few seconds, but it captures the resourceful, handmade spirit that runs through the entire production. Number 12. An audition became a scene. One of the film's most memorable moments wasn't written in any draft of the script. It came straight from an actor's instinct in the moment. When the Sheriff of Rottingham crashes through the roof and lands in Latrine's room, the witch, played by Tracey Ullman, delivers a line that audiences never forget. After narrowly missing a romantic encounter, she looks directly at the camera and adds an improvised remark that Mel Brooks found so funny he kept it in the finished movie without hesitation. Ullman had built a reputation for exactly this kind of fearless spontaneity. Brooks gave her room to experiment throughout production, and she took full advantage of it. Her approach to Latrine went beyond simply reading the script. She inhabited the character with a physical intensity and comedic boldness that elevated every scene she appeared in. The improvised moment became one of the most talked about gags in the entire film, despite being completely unplanned. The same spirit of on-set improvisation extended to other performers as well. The scene where the sheriff crashes into Latrine's room was reportedly improvised almost entirely by Roger Rees and Ullman together with Brooks, simply watching and deciding what worked. This willingness to let actors play and to recognize when unscripted moments were better than written ones gave the comedy a looseness that rigid productions rarely achieve. It's a reminder that some of the best jokes in any film are the ones nobody planned. Number 13. The moving mole joke debate. Throughout the film, a small detail on Prince John's face quietly becomes one of its most divisive gags. Richard Lewis's character has a mole that changes position from scene to scene, starting on his left cheek, migrating to his chin, his lip, his right cheek, and eventually landing in the middle of his forehead. The gag is a direct callback to the shifting hump on Igor's back in Young Frankenstein, recycled here with the same deadpan commitment that made the original work. Critics were split on whether this kind of recycling was clever homage or creative laziness. Some reviewers praised the mole as one of the film's subtler running jokes, one that rewarded repeat viewings and attention to detail. Others saw it as evidence that Brooks was leaning too heavily on his own back catalog, instead of generating fresh material. The gag also served as a gentle spoof of Alan Rickman's visible mole in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, adding another layer of parody on top of the self-reference. The debate around the mole reflects a larger conversation about how Mel Brooks's comedy style evolved over the decades. His earlier films buried jokes in layers that audiences discovered over time, while his later work, including this one, tended to signal its gags more openly. Whether that shift represents decline or adaptation depends entirely on the viewer. What's undeniable is that the mole remains one of the most discussed visual details in the entire movie, which, for a tiny piece of makeup, is a remarkable achievement. Number 14. A deleted role still got paid. Behind one of the film's smallest on-screen moments lies a story of unexpected generosity. A then-unknown actress named Chase Masterson was originally cast in a speaking role as Prince John's companion, with a specific joke referencing a popular television show of the era. She built a rapport with Mel Brooks during auditions and was excited to join the production, but when editing began, Brooks realized the joke might not age well, and her scene was cut from the final version. Rather than simply letting the role disappear entirely, Brooks made a decision that Masterson has called heartwarming ever since. He kept her visible in the background for just long enough to qualify for on-screen credit and residual payments. When he broke the news at a restaurant reception, he framed it with characteristic humor, telling her there was good news and bad news. The bad news was the scene was gone. The good news was he'd left her in just enough so she could still get paid. Those residuals, according to Masterson, have continued arriving ever since, making them her favorite recurring checks in the industry. The gesture wasn't required by any contract or guild rule. It was simply Brooks choosing to protect a young performer's livelihood when he easily could have done nothing. In an industry where deleted scenes typically mean deleted paychecks, the story stands out as a rare moment of personal kindness from a director who understood that behind every small role is a real person depending on the work. Number 15. The songs are half original. Musical numbers have been a Mel Brooks signature since the very beginning of his career, and the film carried that tradition forward with a mix of original compositions and borrowed material. Brooks personally wrote the lyrics for the title song, performed by the Merrymen, the ballad sung by Maid Marian, and both versions of the Sherwood Forest Rap. Composer Hummy Man provided the melodies, crafting an orchestral score that one critic compared favorably to the legendary swashbuckler scores of the Golden Age. Not everything was created from scratch, though. The romantic ballad that Robin serenades Marian with, a lush Dean Martin-style number, was actually written in 1937 by Dana Suissa, Billy Rose, and Irving Cahall. It's a genuine classic standard, dropped into a medieval parody without any irony, which is precisely what makes the moment work. The melody of the title song itself also borrows from an earlier Brooks composition used in History of the World Part 1, recycled here with slight modifications to fit the new lyrics. This blend of original and borrowed material reflects a long tradition in comedy filmmaking, where parody musicals walk a careful line between creating something new and echoing something familiar. The actors didn't perform their own vocals either. Professional singers dubbed the musical sequences, with Debbie James voicing Marian and Arthur Rubin standing in for Elwes. The result is a soundtrack that sounds polished and grand while serving a movie that's anything but serious, a combination that captures exactly how Brooks approached comedy throughout his entire career. Number 16. Not a flop, a quiet hit. Despite what some people assume, the film was far from a commercial failure. Made on a budget of $20 million, it opened on a Wednesday in late July 1993 and debuted